evening, everyone, and welcome to the Here Now Project's first DAC-WA Forum of 2023. My name is Kenny Salvini, and I'm the co-founder and president of the Here Now Project. And we serve as the Washington State chapter of the United Spinal Association. Our mission is to connect and empower the paralysis community in the Pacific Northwest, and we have done so over the years with care baskets to the newly injured, as well as our rotating calendar of monthly support meetings all over Western Washington. And then we've got potlucks, barbecues, annual meetups, and other social events, and these quarterly DAC-WA forums that is a group of longtime wheelchair users with a ton of resources called the Disability Advocacy Coalition of Washington. And yeah, this is a really, I think, appropriate topic right now. I was telling the presenters just before we hopped on that you know, the caregiving crisis is a real thing in a post-pandemic world, and my life has been touched by it personally. I have one caregiver on my staff right now that is 37 weeks pregnant, so we are going to be constantly on the hunt for folks, and I'm just really appreciative of the whole DAC-WA committee, as well as a special shout out to Marcia Cutting, who pulled a lot of strings to get our presenters here today. Just a bit of housekeeping. Real quick is we'll ask everybody to stay muted, leave their videos off for the duration, just so we can hopefully won't cut into the bandwidth of the Zoom. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get those addressed once the Q&A begins. Yeah, with that, I think I'm going to pass it off to our MC, Elaine Stefanowicz. She can present or introduce our presenters, and we'll go from there. Take it away, Elaine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Stefanowicz. It looks like I have a halo on my head, but it's the light behind me, so I'm far from a halo, probably more devil horns. So thanks for coming here tonight. And I work for my job. I work for the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment, and I'm a program coordinator there. And we've heard a lot about the caregiver crisis. And so this, I had mentioned before, I'm fortunate I don't need a caregiver right now, but I'll be 58 in May and 40 years in a wheelchair with a spinal cord injury. I can feel my neck and shoulders going. And I've broken my leg, 2 years ago. I mean, things happen. And so it's definitely something, that I want to be aware of. And so hopefully I'll be talking about legislation later and some bills that you can be watching out for. And if you're not seeing what you want, well, then let's write a bill together. So I haven't done it before, but let's figure out how to do it together. If, we need to work together on this. And so I still think we should have a staffing agency specializing in spinal cord injury and people in wheelchairs and who have paralysis, and we train all the nurses. How about that? All the CNAs. So, okay. Thanks, Tanisha. Thank you for the validation. She validated me in chat. So welcome, everyone. And I am just going to introduce our first speaker here. And it's not coming up. And I had it all ready to go, because that's how it always happens. Okay, so Stacy Graff is our first speaker, and she's the Workforce Development Unit Manager for the Home and Community Service Division of Aging and Long-Term Support Administration. While Stacy is newer to this position, she's worked for Home and Community Services for the past 24 years in various positions, including case management, quality assurance, and quality improvement, resource development, and most recently as the program manager for individual providers and administrative hearings. Stacy has a son who's enjoying his journey through college at Western Washington University, and she is an informal caregiver to her 79-year-old mother, and she enjoys spending time hanging out with her two Great Danes, Princess and Oscar. So Stacy, take it away.
Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate that. So as we talk about workforce shortage, the last couple of days I've had a parent in the hospital, and she's been in the ER this whole time. Pretty sure because it has a lot to do with the shortage of people in the hospital and being able to get people moved out of the hospital into other settings to make room for hospital beds. So she's been sitting in the ER. So just want to let you know that I'm experiencing that myself. And also that if I get a phone call, I'm going to have to jump off. So appreciate your patience with me. So as Elaine mentioned, I work for Home and Community Services, and I'm the Workforce Development Unit Manager. And my goal today is just to talk with you about some of the things that ALTSA, Aging and Long-Term Support Administration, is trying to do to impact the workforce issues that we have with caregivers. So, Sonya, would you be able to show the presentation? So we do have some solutions that are in progress here at ALTSA. We have a workforce development team, and I'm going to talk about what their roles are and the goals of that team. 2 slides, please. All right. So our team is a small team. Our objective is to build and increase the long-term caregiver workforce to hopefully try to meet the needs of the growing number of clients. We try to do that through various outreach events, through what we're calling innovative programs. I'll talk some about those, marketing and advertising events. And then also to help create some resources to help with retention efforts. And I'll talk about a toolkit that we're working on right now. The next slide, please. So one of the people in my unit is a workforce development high school liaison. And I think this is a pretty innovative program. The work that she does is to reach out to high schools across the state to let them know of this high school home care aid training program that allows high school students to take a 90-hour semester class while they're in high school, and they earn high school credit and also earn the 75-hour training certificate if they complete that class that prepares them to take the home care aid certification test. So when they finish the class, they can take that written and skills test. And when they're 18 years old, they're ready to work and can be employed as a home care aide. So the person in my unit reaches out to tons of high schools. She has lots of introductory meetings. We've had a lot of high schools that are really interested in the program. And we have one high school that is currently implementing the program. They finished it last spring, actually. They had about 15 students who participated in that class in Everett High School. And they're getting ready to offer it again this spring. So we're really in the process right now with that. So we're still promoting the project to other schools who are interested and trying to get creative if and when there's barriers to implementation. And we're also really working on doing some process development. So lessons learned from that first class. For example, we had the students who finished that class finished it in June, and they had a long gap between when they finished that class and when they were able to take the test, which made it difficult for students to remember the materials. So trying to, problem solve some of those issues. So the program right now is at Everett High School. I saw a question pop up. All right. The next slide, please. So another one of the employees in our workforce development team is an outreach coordinator. So she's really active in community organizations. She goes to community colleges. She goes to career and resource fairs. And most recently, she and a couple other team members, we met with some folks at JBLM and talked to them about the program for military home care aid program for military spouses. So it was our understanding that military spouses are looking for work. They need potentially work that can be flexible, and they need work that you know, they can get quickly trained, and that them being in one place for maybe only 3 or 4 years isn't going to be a barrier. So we're having some success with that population. And we also did a presentation last week to the Refugee and Immigration Services Northwest, and we had some folks come to that presentation as well. And that was our first time doing that presentation. So again, we're a newer unit. We're have lots of lessons learned, but we're continuing to build those relationships in the community. Next slide. We have a workforce development analyst. So he really helps us with data collection, which is not an easy task, especially when you think about, for those of you who know the path of that the caregivers who get certified have to take. So from the point where somebody's maybe interested in becoming a caregiver to the point where they're actually certified and employed is a long journey. So part of his task is to help try to measure what things are impactful. And I see some, after this slide, I'll go ahead and stop for some questions because I see them popping up. So we'll try to answer some of those. So this member of our team also creates some visual representations of the data, looks at trend analysis, and helps us develop recommendations based on what he's finding. And one of the really cool things that he's done for us recently, and I'll show you on the next slide, and then we'll get to some of those questions. On the next slide is a mapping tool that he's been working on for us. So this map shows the home care aid testing sites, and it shows assisted living facilities. And we use this specific example. We could add in the high schools as well. And then we're able to help determine for high school students, how far do you have to go to a testing site? How far do you have to go from your school or, you know, general home area to an assisted living? And that helps reduce some barriers that, you know, if a high school student has a barrier like transportation, then it's important for them to know that a facility can be close by, and you know, maybe we can help them to problem solve those transportation issues. Is somebody able to read the questions for me? I don't think that I'm able to see them except as they pop up. And I'm happy to address some of those.
Yeah, at the moment they're mostly statements, not exactly questions.
Okay.
But we can reframe them. I know that one individual was talking about the issue of when clients go to the hospital, they don't get paid. But yeah, this is mostly statements that we can kind of encapsulate at the end too. So.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. If something pops up that you need me to address, could you just please let me know, and I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, will do.
Okay. Next slide, please. So we have another employee that's really focused on retention. And their role is really to develop resources to help supervisors of assisted living facilities, adult family homeowners, home care agency staff, et cetera, with retention efforts. And currently that person is working on a toolkit. And that toolkit is comprised of, I think it might be down to 4 elements, and I have 5 up here: recognition, well-being, communication, and onboarding. I have navigation binder in my notes, and that needs to get updated. But working on those toolkits, those elements. So it's some training materials, and then there will be actual formal trainings that go along with those specific elements. So for well-being, there's several trainings that go with the well-being toolkit materials to help talk about the importance and give suggestions and tools for helping staff ensure the well-being of their staff. Next slide, please. So we also have some marketing efforts in place. Next slide. We do have a website. It's called Washington Care Careers. And the website is really meant to be an easy, a place for people who are interested in being a home care aide. It should be an easy place for them to go and find information. We are finding that it's not as easy for people to navigate as we had hoped. When I came into the unit a few months ago and I tried to navigate, there were certainly some things that I had trouble finding. So we are in the process of making that more user-friendly for the public to use. It's no good to have a website out there that isn't helpful for anyone. All right, next slide. So some of the other marketing materials that we have going, we have some print ads in the Veterans Day guidebook, and I talked about, we're talking to military spouses, but also military retirees. We have some caregiver spots on Facebook and Instagram, some rack cards, so informational cards just with some of the basic information about how to become a home care aide, and flyers that are out there. And we've just had a bunch of those translated into different languages so that we could bring them and present at the Refugee and Immigration Services presentation that we did. And we are continuously updating our materials where we find that something needs to be improved. For example, some of the information that we brought didn't have clear information about all the different languages that the testing and training is offered in, and that's really important information to somebody where English is not their first language. So making sure that we're improving and updating our materials as we go along and we learn from our experiences. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of our rack cards that we have for military spouses. So it talks about that it's a flexible work environment. You can get trained in as little as 2 weeks. There's opportunities for career growth after becoming a home care aide, and that some states support the military spouse license, the transfer of license from one state to another. Next slide. So this is kind of an exciting thing. I think it's exciting. We are in the process of getting ready to hire some what we're calling workforce navigators. So what really we're finding when we're going out and doing some of our presentations and reaching out to people, because DSHS does not hire the caregivers, it's Consumer Directive Washington, it's the home care agencies, it's the assisted livings, adult family homes that are actually hiring the people. There's really this gap in when we're giving our presentations and we're saying, you know, here's you know the benefits to becoming a home care aide. It's something that's really needed, and then people are kind of like, okay, well, what do I do next? And we're kind of like, you know, you can go to this website, but it's really not enough, because you guys know that it's a complicated maze to get through training, certification, and hiring process. So I heard this quote from someone who was a caregiver, who said that, you know, and this made me think of our navigators. So we're not just opening the door, don't just open the door, but help us get through. So that is really the point of the navigators. So providing a really person-centered approach to becoming a home care aide. So helping that prospective caregiver understand the different kind of work settings, helping them connect with local training and test sites, helping them connect with potential employers within their community that are hiring, helping identify barriers and possible solutions. So I talked about transportation, and maybe other obligations that they have. Maybe, you know, working in a facility that is going to be an 8 to 5 job potentially is not a good solution for somebody who has other obligations. You know, they need to pick up kids at a certain time. And providing communication assistance. So one thing that we saw with our high school students is we had people that were students that didn't show up for their certification exam. So and we're still investigating, getting some information, but how come they didn't show up? Did they forget because they're, you know, young people that you know didn't you know, write it down? Were they busy? Exactly. I see text reminders come up. Yeah, so we need to provide some of those tools to help people navigate through the complicated system, and then helping again connect people with employers. So I have this crazy little slide coming up that we're really in the process of working on, and please don't feel like you have to read all of those words, and I think it's blurry anyway. I threw it in at the last minute, and this is a draft that we're working on, but this is kind of what we're hoping our navigators will do. So I'll walk through quickly. So as we hire our navigators, we want to make sure that they're talking with all the team members on our team and others to find out where others in the community to find out where they can fill the gaps. We want them to become familiar with that mapping tool that we showed earlier, so they can help people know, you know, if you live in Lakewood, where are the and you want to work in an adult family home, where are the adult family homes located within the community that you want to work. Providing, when we go and do outreach events, you know, getting information from people who are interested. So sign up sheets, or, you know, even passing out business cards, those kind of things. But how can we further our communication with those folks and do some follow up with people to reach out to prospective home care aides to get information and identify their preferences. What kind of setting do they want to work in? And can we review those settings with them? What area, what hours, what are their needs and preferences? So I won't go through the whole thing here, but our hope is that those navigator positions, and they're going to be filled throughout the state in the three different regions, will really be successful in helping people with some more hands-on assistance to navigate through the process, and some warm handoffs maybe to specific to employers as well. So I think that's it. I think I talked for a long time and said a lot of stuff. So thanks for listening.
That's great. And there were a few questions. I know have you gotten your phone call yet? Are you?
No, we're good.
Yeah, would
We're
you be
good.
able to? Yeah, there were a few questions in the chat, and one was, where can you get the rack cards?
Yeah, so if you're interested in rack cards, you can certainly reach out to me. I think my contact information should be in the meeting notice, as
Okay.
far as my email. And I can just kind of let me know what we are trying to really individualize the rack cards to the certain populations, you know, where it's appropriate, because we're finding one rack card with just basic information isn't necessarily appropriate for all of the different populations.
Right,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Patricia says, as a caregiver for my adult son, I'm having trouble. I see a number of obstacles attracting and retaining caregivers. Number one, let me see, I have trouble scrolling here. No, I've gone too far. The training requirements are high and not particularly convenient, making larger portions available through asynchronous distance learning would be helpful. Work income is often not reliable. When our fragile clients / family go to the hospital, we have to work for them. Gosh, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time. Can't get paid when they're in the hospital. It would create some income stability for caregivers. I guess it's more of a comment here. It's not a question. So,
and you know, some things are like federal law that, and I think probably it's not advisable for me to be speaking on this because I'm, you know, but I'm going to. But this is just my opinion and my thoughts. But I know that there are some laws that conflict with, you know, being able to care for somebody when somebody's using benefits to pay a hospital. They can't also use benefits to pay a caregiver when the hospital is supposed to have caregivers also that are taking care of the person's needs while they're in the hospital. And that's, you know, obviously that was not said eloquently at all. And I know that, you know, again, I've been in the ER with my mom the last couple of days, and there's certainly nobody around to help her out. So I get it.
Yeah. Is there a reference list or registry for caregiving agencies that somebody's asking for their resource folders?
Yeah, if somebody could send me, whoever wants that, I mean, I can send you some links. And we do actually have some tools on our website that might be helpful for finding for finding local home care agencies.
Oh, great. And Stacy Owen has her hand up. I don't know, Rob, if you can unmute her so she can ask a question.
Hi, this is Stacy. You know, I'm a quadriplegic and require extensive care. So one of the barriers that I run into is, you know, I'm high needs care. My needs are complex. You know, it's difficult to find caregivers that are willing to provide that level of care at that rate of pay when they could, you know, they've got the Karina Care app. They can go and they can see what people's needs are, and like anyone of us that are in the working world, we're going to take a job that requires, you know, less work for the same pay. And that's a huge barrier. I know that I'm often overlooked immediately because my level of care. And I'm wondering if at the state level, if they have any plans to address that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's always bills that are out there. There's also lots of strategic planning that I'm just trying to think of things that come across my desk or that I see. I mean, I think that everybody's aware of the competition, right, between jobs that are all in that same range. And I think that that's something that's always being looked at. I can't tell you anything specific that I know of right now, other than, I mean, I think, you know, that we're always looking at, you know, are there even if it's not specifically, I mean, I think they do specifically look at hourly wage things, but they also look at, is there a way that, you know, that maybe a person doesn't have to pay for a continuing education class? Is there a way that a person doesn't have to pay for the certification? You know what I mean? All the other fees and all the other things that are built in there as well. It's not a very good answer, very concrete for you, but I can guarantee you that DSHS is always looking at those kind of things.
Okay, I'm sorry, I mute myself when the dogs are barking. And then, so we have just a couple more minutes with Stacy, and I see Patricia has her hand up. Go ahead, Patricia. If somebody could unmute her, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Stacy, and for the work you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I hear your response to the previous question. And I think just to add to, you know, like you say, the work that is always going on, trying to help people with this situation. I think maybe it could be considered that there could be something like, you know, how when you work in a hospital and you get a night differential if you work a night shift, like that's how they get people to work night shifts. People with more complex care needs could have kind of a differential added to the pay rate when you take a client that has more complexity. And we are already gathering that data on people. So we know which people are more complex. Like that's already known information. And so that could be leveraged to create kind of a differential that could be tied to, maybe you do an extra training module, now you can get paid more money.
So I think there are some of those, and I can't speak to them here. Sonya, I don't know if you can speak to that at all. There are some, you know, increases in wages depending on certain classes, but perhaps you're already aware of that and you're speaking on, you know, in addition to that. So
yeah,
well taken.
Thank you. Yeah, a home care aide doesn't necessarily get more money for working for a more complex client.
Right.
That's the current situation. Some caregiving agencies will offer a higher rate to people who are doing nurse delegation, or maybe they're doing things like that, but not necessarily more money because you are taking care of someone who needs a Hoyer lift and needs a bowel program and has catheters and, you know, has complicated stuff that is, it takes more knowledge. I mean, it takes a higher level of skill and it's more work. And, you know, we all want great people to do it and we want to attract and reward people who are great.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
Point
thanks for hearing me. And if there's, you know, if you're sitting at a table where you have a chance to make a suggestion like that, I hope you'll help pass it on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for those great questions. And thank you again, Stacy. I know you're dealing with a lot of personal stuff right now, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight and for sharing your PowerPoint with us. And so I apologize if there's other questions. If people have other questions, can we email them to you?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That would
That's
be
just
wonderful.
fine. And,
Okay.
you know, I have been using some of my time in the hospital when my mom's sleeping, talking with the CNAs and asking, how long have you worked here? Why do you stay? What are what should I be communicating, you know, to other people to, you know, who might want to work in the field. And I got an opportunity to speak to somebody today who's been in the field for, I think she said 20 years and at the hospital about 13. And she said, you know, it's a hard job and you just, it's rewarding. And that was, you know, for her, it was something that was rewarding. So.
Wow, you had a captive audience.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was like, while
That's
you're taking
cool.
that blood pressure, can I talk to you for a second?
Yeah. That's
All right.
wonderful. Great.
Thank
Have
you
a good
so much.
evening. Thank
Okay.
you. You have a lot of love in the chat. Know that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, that was wonderful. So we have another speaker here, and her name is Sonya Declet, and she's a Consumer-Directed Employer Unit Manager for the Office of the Assistant Secretary Division on Aging and Long-Term Support Administration. Sonya moved to Washington in 2018 to join the Consumer-Directed Employer Project, bringing her 17 years of experience in human services, including 10 years state government experience in quality assurance and improvement, to help the transition of 45,000 individual providers to the new legal employer, Consumer Direct Washington. So, welcome, Sonya, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for inviting us. It's good to see everyone, and I am going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint slide. So this is the Consumer-Directed Employer. I know some of you had put comments in there about CDWA, so we can hopefully talk through some of them. So just some basic information. The Consumer-Directed Employer is part of the statute. It came into 2018 and it established the program here in Washington State. And it provides, it is related to individual providers who provide personal care and respite care through the Medicaid or Medicaid, through the state plan or the waiver authority. And so and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but the idea was that the case managers were the ones who are providing a lot of administrative services, making sure that the IPs who are providing the in-home personal care or respite care were meeting all of the qualification requirements. And it was becoming a lot of work and taking up a lot of time for the case managers. And so the statute was created to make the Consumer-Directed Employer the legal employer. At the time that it started back in 2018, when I joined the project, there were approximately 40,000 individual providers, and now there are approximately 46,000 individual providers, which actually makes CDWA, I think, the third or fourth largest employer here in the state of Washington. And so again, that the whole purpose was to shift those administrative IP employment related responsibilities off of the case management, give those case managers time back to work with their clients, and put the work then onto the CDE. And so just a rundown of the legal employer. So it is Consumer Direct Washington, or CDWA, as you'll hear me refer to it. And they do all of the employment, the payroll, and all of those administrative functions for the IPs. And this includes any live-in provider or parent provider, which we have a lot of those in the developmental disabilities administration. And they're the ones who make sure that payroll runs correctly, that IPs have the training that they need to have, that they're at the right level, And then the biggest piece about the consumer-directed employer was making sure that clients maintained their right to be the managing employer or the co-employer. And this can be either the client or an authorized representative. And so it really is the managing employer's option as to selecting an IP, doing the schedule, assigning tasks, doing the managing of the shifts and the work, supervising, and of course, dismissing an IP if they're finding that the IP isn't meeting their needs. So again, you know, when Washington State was looking at this statute and looking at creating this consumer-directed employer, keeping that managing employer right of a client were really the biggest piece in this relationship with the consumer-directed employer. So some of the ways, and this is all CDWA here, but here are some of the ways that they offer assistance right now. And we're going to get into a little bit more about the recruitment as we go on. So they do have a website where people can go on and start the application process. They have webinars, they have video resources, they have FAQs. One of their newest FAQs is in relation to the W-2s that they put out here in January for 2022. They also have some remote support. They started offering Zoom appointments for people, and those Zoom, they can actually walk people through the hiring process. You can also do email or telephone. And they do continue to have like some webinars and some things to sort of help people understand the process. And then they do have in-person, and that can be via an appointment or an in-office with support. They do have hiring events, and they do some one-on-one community events. And so I'm going to go walk through some of these options here. This is their website, consumerdirectwa.com. And if you go to their resources, which is the second thing on the tab, they have a number of different resources. They have ones that are directed at clients, ones that are directed at IPs. They do have some resources for the case managers, for DSHS, and the AAAs. And then you see they have some additional ones called like schedule an appointment and webinar and event calendars, which is down next to the bottom. And I sort of want to give a little walkthrough of what some of those are. So scheduling an appointment, that includes those Zoom appointments, or at an office, which they have 4 offices right now. The one in Federal Way, one in Lacey, one in Spokane, and the newest one is in Everett. And then they also will meet people in their community. For example, a library or a coffee shop. Some of the AAAs and the DSHS offices are working with CDWA on setting them up with perhaps a conference room or somewhere that they can meet with people not just in the community, but actually in an office that they're familiar with, that they may have been to because that's where their case manager is. So there are some offices who are doing that. And then the second, or the next to last one, the webinar and events calendar, that does include some face-to-face hiring events that occur across the state. Those happen 2 to 3 days out of every week, but they are in various different areas. And one of the things to know about those hiring events is they do ask that they do say that registration is required, because they actually send emails out to the people who register prior to the event and say, hey, here are the things that you're going to need to bring with you in order for us to get through all of the steps of the hiring. And so those are some of the ways that they're offering assistance with the hiring process right now. And I know one of the things we wanted to talk about here is getting new caregivers and getting new caregivers into the system. So they just in August or September created a recruitment team. They call it their talent team. And it is a unit currently of 4 members who are dedicated to recruitment. And the whole idea behind this is that, and I have a list of some of the things that they're doing here on an upcoming slide, but it's sort of a warm handoff. What they do is they work with a person, they sort of introduce the concept of it, of what caregiving is, if they've never heard of it before. And they start to walk them through the process. And after they've connected with them, they do follow-ups. They'll follow up via text, or they'll follow up via phone call. Everything that they need to do to get them into the hiring system, which is called Workday. And then once they get into the hiring system, then that is when the admin unit, sorry, I'm going a little fast. The admin unit is the unit within CDWA that actually handles the hiring process from the initial application until an okay to work date. So this recruitment team is newer, but I will say that they are definitely having an effect, and they have been able to recruit a larger number of IPs than they had anticipated. So one of the things that I will tell you is that part of the contract that DSHS has with CDWA requires them to recruit a certain number of IPs per year. And so for the first year of the first and second year of the contract, they have to recruit 1,920 new IPs over the course of a 12-month period. And the way that they determine that somebody has been recruited is that there is an option when somebody is hiring where they indicate whether they already have a client to work with or not. And so they are already, they have until May 31st, that is the end of their first year, because ongoing operations started on June 1st, 2022. And they have already recruited 1,700 IPs. So across the state. So that is what the talent team is focused on, is that recruitment. So some of the things they have been doing to attract some new caregivers is the marketing activities. They have mall ads, they have flyers. They, of course, have stuff on social media, Indeed, Facebook, things like that. They participate in job fairs. They have these job postings and they participate in job boards. And then they also do work source outreach. And one of the things that we are also going to have them do is here in February, they are actually going to meet with Stacy's group. And we're hoping to build a relationship between the CDWA recruitment and Stacy's group. And that way they can work together to help build that resources and other ways to find caregivers. So we're hoping that, there will be a lot of good relationship building between the two. And so then here at the end, I have of the different ways that you can contact CDWA, which is via their website, their email address at info@consumerirectcare.com, their phone number, and they also have a text option. And I know that I'll just say that if at any point in time you would like to have representatives from Consumer Direct Care come and speak to you, I'm pretty sure they would be open to doing so, and I would certainly be willing to facilitate that, and they could give you a little bit more in-depth information than I'm able to give you. I can tell you sort of what the contract calls for and what we're looking for, but the actual work that they're doing is the work that they need to do. And then I also just have a slide here with the actual addresses of their CDWA offices. And these will pop up under resources. If you click schedule an appointment, under each of these addresses, there would actually be a link that would allow you to schedule an appointment at that specific office or request an appointment out in the community. And so that's some of the information that I had to share tonight. And unfortunately, I was not able to look at the Zoom and see the questions that may or may not have been popping up while I was giving that presentation. So.
Well, we will read if there's any questions. And then if you could please stop sharing
Absolutely.
your PowerPoint, which was wonderful. I will see if Addie wanted to know, what is the retention rate for all of the newly recruited IPs, say after a year?
That is a great question. We do not have any data on that yet. That is something that we're going to start looking at because again, their operations technically were fully in effect as of June 1st of last year. So we're only about 8 months into operations. But that is absolutely something that everybody, I think, is interested in, especially with the workforce squeeze that I think everybody is feeling across the state. So that retention rate is something we're definitely going to be looking at. But at this point in time, I don't have information on that.
Well, thank you. And Tisha said, I certainly hope it's quality over quantity. Is there data on where these caregivers are being hired? What regions?
That is a great question. We do have information on where they're being hired, but usually we don't have that information until they're actually connected with a client. So once they're connected with a client, we can identify where they are based upon the field office that the client is associated with. So I don't have that information right now, but it's something that if interested, I can certainly send to Marcia to give to everybody here.
That's great. So there's one more question in chat, and then I see Patricia has her hand up. So Stacy's question is, does the contract have language about onboarding new caregivers in a timely manner?
So the contract does not specify what a timely manner is. We have, again, the expectation of how many are hired. And that actually is just a recruitment. We know that there's also a turnover number. So we don't have any expectations in the contract for that. I will tell you that we have been working with CDWA. So my team, we manage and we're the contract managers, and we have oversight over the contract. And we have been working with them and having discussions with them on an almost weekly basis since October about the delay that was happening with the hiring process. And there were a number of reasons why it occurred. And you can see in the data that they provide to us on a monthly basis, there are some requirements in the contract. And so they provide monthly reports to us on 6 different measures right now. And you can see in the data where in the September and October, the data dipped very poorly, and you could see the hiring process was a problem really significantly during that time, and it shows in the data. But we've been working with them since October to try and alleviate those hiring process issues. And we're definitely hearing that things continue to be slower than they were prior to CDWA. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. During the transition where we were transitioning 44,000 IPs roughly, they had a lot of people who were part of the hiring process to help get those IPs through. And they didn't, having never done this in the state of Washington before, because this is a brand new program, they reduced the number of staff that they had to do the hiring process. And then as these things happened and started to pop up, they realized that it was taking way too long. And so they have increased back up their hiring staff, and that hired number will remain. But unfortunately, it caused a backlog of over 1,000 IPs who were stuck at various stages in the hiring process. And they are working those IPs through, but it does mean that it has sort of slowed everything down. I can't, I know that 2 to 3 weeks was the average before. And we certainly expect them to get people through as quickly as they can. And so when we get through this backlog, we're looking to see how long it's actually taking. They are looking at ways that they can improve their timeliness. Because, it doesn't benefit anyone for them to take 2 or 3 months to hire someone. And most importantly, it definitely does not help the client who's going without care during that time, or going with a caregiver who's not getting paid. So we are consistently working with them to improve that process.
Stacy just had a quick addendum. Is 8 weeks considered timely?
Well, we know anecdotally that 2 to 3 weeks is how long it was taking before. 8 weeks, there's nothing in the contract that identifies exactly what timely is.
Right.
And, again, we don't want clients and individuals going without service for 2 months, or, which is 8 weeks, certainly. And so I would say that eventually, no, that is not what we would expect timely to be.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell what timely should be, because there's a lot of factors that are in the hiring process. I can
Right.
tell you that CDWA has identified 22 places in the hiring process where they have to do something. And so an example, the easiest example of that is like a background check code. They get
Right.
the code from the IP, and then they have to run it within the BCCU system, the background check unit system. And on all 24 of those measures, they are now or all 22 of those measures, they are doing it within 24 hours.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Which is much better than it used to be. And the background check code is the one that just is the most recent to come within that 24 hours. They were up to a month behind on running those codes.
Oh my
So
God.
there really was a big backlog, and it was from lack of staff. But now we're watching to see how getting that backlog through is going to
Right.
ultimately
Right.
change that. Stacy, that's a really good question about language being added to define timely. It's certainly something that can be discussed, but it would be very hard to determine exactly what that timely would consist of. We would have to do probably a lot of data digging. And part of the issue is that, prior to CDWA taking over, all of the field offices did their hiring differently. And so some field offices were very quick about their hiring and some weren't, but I think we could probably definitely look at what a home care agency does in regards to their hiring timelines, and we could probably look at something. And I can tell you, Stacy, you're not the only person, I think, who would be interested in seeing sort of that kind of language added to the contract. And so I think it's something that as we move forward, we can definitely keep in mind.
Well, thank you. And Patricia, who's been so patient, please go ahead.
Hi, Sonya. Thanks for being here tonight.
Hi, Patricia.
So some of what I wanted to talk to you about has already been said in terms of like opportunities to define timely manner in the contract going forward. I think lesson learned, right? Like that needs to be defined. And do you have for your own team what you would consider to be timely manner? Like where would you like to see, separate from what you think is realistic or what you think can be legislated? What do you think, where would you like to see it be for that onboarding process?
You know, I think that there is certainly a desire to have it similar to what it was when IPs were contracted with the state. There are some barriers to that that we need to keep in mind. You know, you're talking about upward of 20, I mean, I don't even know honestly how many field offices there are, because even some of the AAAs have more than one field office. And
Sure,
and
yeah,
then you have HCS, and then you have DDA. So there's a lot of field offices, and a lot of those offices had one or more staff who were devoted and dedicated to the hiring process. You know, when I
yeah.
first
So,
started this
Sonia,
job, yeah, go ahead.
so the answer I'm hearing you say is 2 to 3 weeks, which at this point would be great. But if you think about a skilled nursing facility, they would onboard a CNA in 2 weeks or less. So, you know, I see all of the challenges, and there's so many, and it's not that I don't have empathy, because I do. I see those challenges. And I think it's great that you're here tonight, because you're also then hearing the challenges that the folks on the other end of that delay have, the folks who are waiting for care, or the folks who have actually found somebody who's willing to work, and now they're trying to get them through the process. And you know, all of the workarounds and things that we can't speak of that we do to manage, even if it's better than it is now, I even think 3 weeks is long, and that probably makes everybody's eyebrows go up. But so I appreciate that you're here tonight, so that you're hearing the pain on the other side, because I get that there's pain all around, on both sides of the hiring. And you know, I'd love to see timely manner be something like 2 weeks tops, because most of the time if somebody wants a job that they're willing to take for $20 an hour, they need that job and they need that money quickly. And if they can go get hired at McDonald's and start in 2 days and get a paycheck in a week, because they really need that $20 an hour, they're going to take the job that they can get that paycheck quickly. And that's kind of the workforce that we're competing for here, because that's what the compensation is.
Yeah, you are completely right. And I have certainly heard that comparison of being able to go to McDonald's and get hired and get paid pretty much right away, as definitely being an issue that needs to be worked through.
Well, thank you for those. These are great questions. And I see Ruby's hand up. If Rob, if you can unmute her, that would be great.
Hi. Thank you for having this. I just happened to see it on Facebook, and I was one of the folks who it took about 8 weeks from when I applied with CDWA to getting to provide care for the client. And I just wanted to, I'm sure you guys have heard before, but share, as a CNA, I came from an agency. So like we've discussed before, the onboarding is a lot quicker. I think it at 2 weeks is probably like you're in and you got a badge and you're going. The other thing, my client she's the daughter of like a friend, my nephew's preschool teacher, and it just worked out that way that I kind of found them. But for someone like the client who I work for, she needs someone all day. She's blind, she's deaf, she loves to smile, she loves to swim, but she needs somebody. And I'm just wondering if there's anybody doing work that you guys are aware of, and I'm gonna read through the chat, that we could partner with, or like look into their work for incentivizing workers to look for clients like the one I have, who I can see someone who might want to work for someone that's like, I don't want to say easier, but needs less support, like my mom said, because I just see someone like my client falling through the cracks. And I know that everyone's doing the best that they can, but it's just, it doesn't, I say this coming from an agency where I'm being placed at Retzel and I'm making $32 an hour there as a CNA, and that's not the highest. I'm not making the most. So we know that, I know for myself that all money is not good money, but for workers who really need this, who might not be a CNA certified or they don't want to work for an agency, and I'm just wondering if there's any work out there that's being done to help people like Claire, who I work for, who really needs a worker, who someone's going to have to be with her. You got to be with her all the time. Whereas I know there's other clients that don't need that. Not that they need less work, but just they need less, they don't need as much support. And if we're paying the same for every client, I'm just wondering if there's any work being done to incentivize workers to support people like Claire.
So that's a really great question, Ruby. And I think it's a really great example of what is genuinely like, what is going on for these for people. And it's very easy to look at like, oh, there's 45,000 individual providers, which means there's these many clients. And as you start to look at the big numbers, it's really easy to sort of lose the human touch of it, as it were. I know that there has been talk within DSHS about looking at what you're talking about, that based on acuity, the pay rate would be different. I will be honest with you, that is like in the secretary's office sort of conversations, and I don't know what's happening with those. But I know that there has been conversation about that, and I know that it's something that DSHS knows exists and would like to be able to do something about it. But I really couldn't give you any more details beyond that, just because I don't have that sort of level of knowledge or input into that. But I know that it's something that's being discussed.
Thank you, Ruby. We appreciate you asking that question. Somebody asked if a COVID shot is required in Washington State for caregivers.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Now, agencies, home care agencies individually could perhaps choose to require that, but the state does not, and individual providers, so CDWA, does not
Okay.
require that.
Great. Thank you. And Rob asked, is there a flow chart that depicts the process flow from where someone needs a caregiver to when there is a caregiver working?
There is not. So CDWA does have on their website, the consumerdirectwa.com, they have a 7-step process, but there is not a flow chart in regards to the actual, like, here's where you start and here's where you finish.
Okay, thank you. And Joe said the legislature can get involved with the pay differential issue. Will CDWA get involved and support this when and if it comes up?
That is a question we would have to take back to CDWA. I can't speak for them as the vendor. That is certainly something that they would have to decide to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sonya, thank you so much for all of this great information. Like we asked Stacy, if people have other questions, would it be okay if we email those to you?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. We really appreciate that. So thank you for being here tonight. I know you work all day and then you come and volunteer to do this for us. It's really, really appreciated.
Absolutely. It's always I always like to hear and to participate in these, because having those experiences like Ruby or Patricia and really being able to hear it makes a big difference.
Well, that's great. Okay. Well, you're welcome to stay on if you'd like. We're gonna move on to our next topic. It's completely up to you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Yeah, you too.
Mm.
Thank you. All right. Well, the next thing that we're going to be doing is talking about legislation. And you're like, what does that have to do with caregiving? The legislative session is going on right now. And Marsha, I know she's hopefully still here and can turn her video and sound on. And I was just going to kind of run through really quickly how you can find out about legislation or, specifically regarding people with disabilities in Washington, or specifically about caregiving. It's not too difficult. Sometimes it's like when you Google something and you don't have the right keyword, it can be more challenging to find something. So I was trying to do a caregiving search, and then sometimes it could be caregiver. So you just have to have, or there might be legislation that, the title doesn't sound like anything to do with caregiving, but it could be in there. I mean, there was same with, different issues that affect people with disabilities. There was a bill about solitary confinement, which doesn't sound like it affects people with disabilities, but it actually does. So you would never think, of something like that. I work for the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment, and we're involved with a bill called Nothing About Us Without Us. And we tried last year to do this and it didn't pass, unfortunately, but it's any marginalized group that we have a seat at the table for any decisions made about us. So it's a little frightening to think of, other people making decisions for us, and people with lived experiences aren't even being, not even, welcome to the table at all. So Marsha, is there anything more you want to say about that?
Oh boy, where to start? I don't know of any bills specifically related to caregiving at this point in the legislative session. There may be some. I haven't had a chance to review all the legislation.
No problem. No, I just meant about Nothing About Us Without Us. Do you have anything further to say about that?
Just that we need to do everything we can to get it passed.
Yeah.
And we probably should say that if you Google or in some other search engine, the terms Washington State Bill Tracker, that should take you to the site where you can put in the number of a bill that you're following. Do you by chance have that number?
I do. Well, I was gonna share with everyone. So
and you can, if you can't make it to a hearing, you can sign in pro or con, and you also can make a statement about why you feel the way that you do about the bill. And doing that sort of thing is really important because the legislators, I mean, frankly, they look at the number of people who've signed in pro and con. So if you can't do anything other than that, please do that.
Absolutely. There's you can give testimony. There's a lot of different things that you can do, written testimony, or doing it through Zoom. I don't think you even have to be in person anymore. I think you can just do it through Zoom. So can you see my screen? This says Washington State Legislature. Okay, so And it's ledge.wa.gov it looks like leg, but it's ledge.wa.gov. And so it takes you to this main page here. One of the neat things you can do first is if you don't know what district you're in, which is really an important piece so you know who your legislators are, you can just click the find your district. So if I just went to, oh, it popped up my address and I say find my district, it will show, my computer's acting slow. And my dogs will probably start barking here any moment, just because I want them to be quiet. So you can see my state district, I'm in State District 23. I have these 3 legislators, and I'm in Congressional District 6. And Maria Cantwell, Patty Murray, and Derek Kilmer are my representatives. So it's just good to know what district you're in. So if you want someone to support a bill like Nothing About Us Without Us, you can find out who you need to contact. And then you can see that these are hyperlinks. So if I clicked on their name, it would pop up their page and how to contact them. I have actually contacted Senator Patty Murray's office because I was told I had an overpayment for Social Security disability, which I hope nobody else has gone through. And I could not get an actual person. And I was going to have to do bankruptcy. I was about ready to lose my home. And so I contacted Senator Patty Murray's office to play hardball. And I said, can someone from your office try to help me get through to Social Security disability? And they did. And oh my gosh, I had an appointment quickly with the Social Security office. So anyway, it was frustrating and hard to get a hold of someone, and it worked. So I'm one of her constituents. Okay, so if we click on bill information, which is over on the left hand side here, and come on. If we don't know the name of a specific bill, we can say find specific text in a bill, and that's a good way to search. We wait 100 years for it to get to the next page.
While it's waiting to get to the next page, somebody asked about the bill number for Nothing About Us.
Yeah.
And that only dropped. That's a term. The process that a bill goes through to be made into law is Byzantine, but one of the steps in the process is it gets dropped, and that means it's formally entered into the process, and that's the point at which it receives a number, and that has just happened within the last day or two, and so that's why the number is not widely spread. But I will continue to look for it while you continue to explain the process.
Oh, that's great. So here's another thing, like I said, it can be, I put in the search terms, and it brought up the Death with Dignity Act, which actually also is about people with disabilities, and something you might want to check out for sure. They're making it easier for people.
Yes.
Oh, Marsha, were you going to say something?
I said, boo, hiss.
Yeah, I know. They're making it easier for people to get the medication by mail to end their life. They're also not requiring, they're not wanting to require a doctor to prescribe it. It could be a nurse practitioner, or so they're just making it way too easy, less time you have to wait to get the medication. And so there are a lot of people that are not very happy about that. So the number 1641 is coming to my mind, Marcia, with Nothing About Us Without Us. So I'm not sure why, but maybe we can,
I think that might be it because
Yeah.
if that would indicate that that it has dropped pretty recently. You said 1681?
41. So if
41.
I go back to this main page here,
Yeah.
under bill information, and I type in HB for House Bill 1641, and you can see it's for the 23-24 session. And then I'm gonna click this, and it says invalid bill number. Let me see, maybe we'll take out the HB.
Yeah.
Oh, doing Mr. Swirly guy. Okay.
That's not quite what you had in mind.
Yeah, about high potency cannabis products. So we want nothing about cannabis without us, evidently. So anyway, well, let's go to another bill that I know has to do about caregiving. So it's House Bill 1435. And I found it. Actually, I have a great boss who helped me find it too. But back in that search page, I typed in caregiving, and 2 bills popped up. I do a little bit of research, but they did eventually pop up. So, and now the dogs are here. So sorry. I knew that was going to happen.
Yep.
Okay, so this is House Bill 1435. And let's see, it's under it's health and wellness. So if I go to documents here, it's going to show, it's got some videos that talk about it. You can read the original bill, or you can go to the House Bill analysis, which is kind of a breakdown about it. So, so you can see, what is this? So here's the summary of the bill. Requires all consumer-directed employers and in-home service agencies to submit specific or specified financial information to the Department of Health to inform, let's see, the development of a home care safety net assessment to secure federal matching funds under the state's Medicaid plan. So, a safety net is a good thing. So that's definitely something that you want to, know more about. And then you can find out who are the sponsor of this bill. Is it somebody that's in my, district? So sponsors are Bronski, Taylor, Bateman. And again, these are all hyperlinks, so you can find out who these representatives are, and contact them and say you're very much, support, or with like the death with dignity. No, don't, I do not support that. So, if you're one of their constituents, that's a huge thing. They want to hear from you. The other bill is House Bill 1694, which is also a health and wellness bill. And I'm going to go to the documents. And again, we can take a look. Here's the original bill. And again, it has to do with caregivers. So that's what we're interested in. So there are a lot of amendments here. And this is by 2025, they're going to address the caregiver shortage. So I know it's at the very bottom. It shows what the new sections are. So it talks about, the second section is about having a spouse as a caregiver. They're doing a pilot project for that. So by June 1st of 2025, the department shall establish a workforce data collection and public reporting monitoring system to accurately determine the status of the long-term care worker supply, long-term care worker shortages, delays in ability for long-term workers to receive required training, testing and certification, unmet service demands, geographic areas of populations, and a monitoring system. So again, this is a great way to find out what's going on with your in your legislative district, and a way to feel more empowered to get involved, because it can feel like you have no say in this matter, and you can, you know, like, I want to change things. Well, get in touch with your local politicians and let them know this is really important to you. So Marcia, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, sorry, I jumped out and now I'm trying to get back to Zoom. Okay, there I am. In the chat, we have found there, nothing about us has dropped both in the Senate and in the House. And because it dropped in both places, it has two different numbers. The Senate bill is 5616 and the House bill is 1541. And Patricia just put the link in the chat. There's a hearing on Friday at 8 a.m. and you can, she has the link in the chat where you can sign up. You can just register. Are you pro or con? And believe me, that is important. If you do nothing more than that, please do that. But if you are moved to do more than that, then please do. If you think you might want to testify, you should know that depending on how many people want to testify, that determines how long you get to speak. And I would strongly recommend that you write out what you want to say and practice reading it and time it. The most time that I've ever seen anybody allowed to have is 3 minutes. If they get a lot of people, they can cut it to 2, they can cut it to 1.5 minutes, they can cut it to 1 minute. When I was testifying on some bills last year, if it was one that I was really committed to, you know, to speaking on, I would prepare a 3-minute version, a 2-minute version, and a 1 minute version, so that I was prepared for whatever they decided to do. Maybe you're really good at speaking on the fly and making the time exact. I will tell you, I'm not. So I think it's really important for all of us to at least sign on to the hearing on Friday as pro or con. And as I said, Patricia was good enough to put that in the chat. The other thing that I would like to add is one of the easiest ways to follow bills related to the disability community is to connect with Disability Rights Washington. They are incredibly active at tracking bills and at organizing people to show up and make a statement. They also do an annual advocacy day, which is pretty cool. You go to Olympia and they set up the appointments with the legislators for you, and you go around to the different legislators. I mean, typically you will go to a legislator from your district, and so you will speak directly to that person and you will tell them why certain bills are important to you. And I think that's a pretty important way to have an impact. And if you're interested, DRW does a good job of coordinating that. And I think they also have a newsletter that they send out like weekly or something. And that's also a really good way to keep track of what's going on. They just save you a whole lot of time and effort.
Absolutely. I actually spoke with the former director of DRW, Disability Rights Washington, and I asked him about how to track bills about caregiving. And he recommended checking organizations that have a stake in the game, like AARP or senior type organizations. And so that's another way to go about it too. So if you're not really sure. So, but it is kind of exciting to give testimony like Marcia was saying, and if you maybe you only do get a minute, but then follow it up with written testimony too that you can refer to in your 1 minute. So I don't have much time. This is why I feel like, you know, this bill should be passed. I've written more about it in my written testimony that I will share with you. So that kind of thing. And then you can write as much as your love and heart desires then. And from what I understand, they really do take the time to read these. So it does have a big impact. All right, well, does anyone, I think the remainder of our time is all Q&A. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know, Marcia, do you see any questions in the chat? I can take a look too. I put the website for Disability Rights Washington in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great recommendation to contact them. Does anybody else have any questions? Patricia, someone could unmute her. That would be great.
Hi.
Yes, please.
Okay,
go ahead.
so I've been searching this whole time to find the right link, and I think I found it. The first one I sent was like general info. So what I'm sending now is where you can say what your position is on the bill. So like my position on this bill is going to be pro. So you can just click on that link and you put in your name, and then you can put your position. And the cool thing about that is when the bill is heard in committee, one of the things that will be read about the bill is how many people have come and signed on in support of that bill. And those numbers will carry forward, and those tell everybody voting on it how many people are behind it that are supporting it. So that's a really important thing that we can do that really only takes like, I don't know, it takes like under 2 minutes. I mean, depending on what your access is like, to click on that and to say, say that you support it. So the last link that I put in is the one that'll be easy. Otherwise you have to like go in and be like, what's being heard on Friday? And it's being heard in the state government committee. Okay. And then which bill is it? And then what do I want to do? So I think that's a better shortcut if anybody doesn't want to take all the time to poke around on the website.
That's great. Thank you. That's really appreciate that. I know and it's about keywords and looking things up. Unless you know a bill number, it can be a challenge. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have a question for Marcia or myself? Or anything about caregiving in general from, the previous speakers, or just complain. We'll listen to complaints too, because I know this can't be easy to find a caregiver. And I can't imagine what Kenny's going through right now, having down to one caregiver and she's 37 weeks pregnant. So, yeah. I know when I've been in the hospital before, I had a friend tell me, she was like, you know that nobody in the hospital is going to help you with your bowel program, right? And you're hooked up to an IV, not able to do it yourself. And I've been in the hospital and wondered what I'm going to do about that, because I'm in flat, on my back in bed. And I had a nurse come in and said, would you like me to help you with your bowel program? And I almost cried. I'm like, yes, please. I didn't know what I was going to do. So sorry if that's TMI. Okay, Stacy, you have a question?
Well, first of all, I think I have a remark. Can the hospital even legally deny you a bowel program?
I don't know if it happened to my friend or not.
Okay.
But that's what she said.
Wow.
And so I went into the hospital and I was just like, oh no, what the heck am I going to do if I can't get out, of bed and, get to the bathroom and, so, yeah, I'm not sure. I just got lucky. Did you have
Yeah,
a question?
Yes, my question is, how could we possibly get things going on the differential pay topic?
Yeah. Marcia, do you have any recommendations?
Oh, boy. Well, the way that I've been trying to, okay, so I have a hobby horse of my own that I'm riding here, which is the right to repair power wheelchair bill. And the way that I've been trying to go about this, and I think we need to realize that I hate to say this, but it's probably too late to start a bill that will get through this session. You know, we probably have to be looking toward the next session. But the way that I have tended to do that is to look for the committee that I thought the bill would fall under, and then see if I knew any of the legislators that were on that committee. For example, there is a wellness and healthcare committee in the House, and Tara Simmons, who is one of my representatives, is on that committee. So I have written to her. I don't know there's any way we can appreciate the amount of work that these people are trying to deal with at this point. You know, I know Tara, I think of her as a friend, and I haven't heard back from her, you know, and I know that she is just swamped, and so are they all. Which is why I say the idea of trying to introduce a bill right now probably just isn't going to happen. My guess is that we have to, you know, we have to wait until the session is through, then go to them, you know, individually, I guess, and say, you know, this is a concern that we have. Can you help us draft a bill?
This is Elaine. I'm also wondering if maybe DRW, Disability Rights Washington, talking to someone there and saying, you know, this is something we're considering. What would our next steps be? So they
I've
might be able
talked
to.
with them. I've talked with DRW about this. I'm not sure they quite get it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and
that's-
I was gonna throw in too that I know that United Spinal Association is looking, they created a working group around this this topic as well, for the national kind of legislation that's going on. And I think it was Rebecca McTaggart. She had signed up to be on this, but I don't see her on here anymore. But they're a chapter of, I believe, out of Pennsylvania, that is looking at creating kind of a national conversation around this same thing too.
Oh, great.
They had scheduled to convene that working group this month. I have not seen updates on that, but I can throw that out to our newsletter and stuff when that stuff starts to float to the surface as well. So
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
yep.
Marcia, can you explain a little bit about what you're considering about the right to repair and power wheelchairs?
Okay, so the Colorado legislature has a member who uses a manual wheelchair, and he got the legislature to pass a right to repair bill for power wheelchairs. And the thing is, right now, okay, so I will use myself as an example. I have my main chair, which was purchased for me, you know, by my insurance carrier, which is basically L&I from another state. And so the repairs for that chair are all covered under insurance, and I shouldn't have to worry too much about that, I hope. But I also have a backup chair that somebody gave me, and that chair happens to be a Permobil. And even the company that I work with to repair my main chair, they can't get parts from Permobil, because in order to get Permobil parts, you have to sign a contract with them. And I guess you have to like guarantee that you'll buy so many $100 worth of parts. And they're a small mom and pop company. And so that doesn't make sense for them to sign that contract. So they can't work on a Permobil chair. I also am fortunate enough to have a couple of very mechanically inclined friends One of my friends used to work for the state ferries in the maintenance department. I think he's also educated as an engineer. And this man can fix anything. He's just one of those amazing people who can do that. But again, if we can't get the parts, that's useless. If we can't get to see the schematics to know how the thing is wired, it's very hard. I mean, he probably could figure it out, but not everybody can. And so that's the information that we should be able to access. Now, there is currently a bill, there is a right to repair bill currently going through the process, but it is very focused on consumer electronics. And the whole focus of the bill is that businesses should have the right to repair these things that they depend on. So it's, you know, I've been talking with Drew Hansen, because he's the other of my representatives, and he was thinking that we could amend it to sort of add this in there. Having read the bill, that's not going to work, because it's a completely different focus. So I think it's going to have to be a separate bill. The good thing is I have the text from the Colorado bill. So if we can find someone that's willing to like sponsor it or something, it seems to me that we could just, you know, sub out the Colorado references and put in Washington references. I don't know. It's probably more complicated than that, but it seems to me like that might be a starting point. And I guess I should say too, that a piece of background to this is that all of the money in power wheelchairs is in selling them. There is very little money in repair. Companies either break even or lose money on repairs. And the other piece of background is that there are two national companies at this point, New Motion, which some of us refer to as No Motion, and American/National Seating. They just, within the past couple of years, they just joined. So they are now another big company. And they are basically driving the mom and pop shops out of business. And I can't tell you, I mean, we're lucky here in Kitsap County. We have a mom and pop shop, which I had, you know, when I was sort of new to all this, I was inclined to kind of look at them with disdain. Well, like, I'm not going to go with that little company. I want the pros, you know. Boy, have I learned. You know, I have a basis for comparison now, and the service that I get from Tim's Home Medical Supply in Bremerton is just light years above what I got from one of the national companies. So it seems to me that right to repair would also support the mom and pop shops and, you know, help us to keep them in business and keep them around, because I think we really need them.
Absolutely. I know it's hard to see the big companies take over like that, and see the independent people trying to stay afloat. So, all right. Well, I know that was a little off topic from caregiving, but you know, this was something important to Marcia, and she brought it up, and she's going to make changes. So when you're passionate about something, get the heck out of the way of a person who knows where they're going, because you'll get run over. And I apologize, my phone fell on the floor and now it's ringing. Kenny,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, no, yeah, I just want to thank Marcia especially for the effort it took to get both Stacy and Sonya on this time around. It was a real good educational forum to get to see what work is going on behind the scenes, and it's also just important to get everyone's feedback on here to give them that firsthand experience of exactly what the impact is like for folks that are on the ground living this stuff. So yeah, we're going to be back in May with one on kind of bowel care and colostomy issues, and then we've also got our whole slate of in-person stuff is going to be coming up for 2023. We got our 5K for today that's going to be in June, our annual meetup, the barbecue, all those things that are going to be happening in the near future. So stay tuned to social media and all of our different channels so that we can keep you guys posted. And I just really appreciate everybody joining us. So thanks again, Marcia and the whole DAC-WA for putting all this together, and for Rob Wood for doing all the background tech stuff. Always appreciate him too. So thanks, guys.